right, welcome back everyone. We are in part 3 of this video tutorial on making a scrolling platformer in Unity, making it a 2D game. One of the things you'll notice is when I made my game, I didn't get the background here, the sky and the ground. That's called a skybox. And so if you look at the game, in just a moment I'm going to open mine up, you're going to see that I don't have that. And I'm going to show you, thanks to Sean, one of my students, who has gone ahead and figured out how to do it. He's going to show me how, and we're going to put that on the video. That's right, he'll be famous. So when we're ready to open up Unity, I don't really go into Unity first. I just open up assets and scenes, and I just go to the main scene or whatever scene I'm working on, and that just opens up Unity for me. Okay, I reinstalled it, so now I'm going to have to do a continue and hope that it doesn't crash and hope that everything still works. It should, because all I did was make some platforms and make those prefabs. So this is going to open, and once it opens, we'll proceed to add our skybox. Okay, so here I am. This is my game. I don't have my asset. You can see under game on the left that there's no skybox there. So one of the things I did is I went to the Unity Asset Store and we looked up, here we go. I did the Unity Asset Store and I found a free skybox. So Sean's going to show me what we need to do. So you've got a red button that says add to my asset, so that makes it pretty obvious. That's what we need to do. And then I got to sign into Unity, so let me pause while I do that. All right, so I'm logged in, so we can go ahead and try to add that to my assets. Added. And then I can go to open to Unity. It should already be open. All right, Sean's helping me out here. And we open in Unity, and we should see Asset Store. Now it's going to connect to it. And so we want to search my assets, and it was Skybox, so just click in there, type Sky. Sky Master, I think it was? No, Skybox. Try the top one. Yeah. I think I downloaded that one. Should be the free. And package contents. Yeah. So we're just going to go ahead and download the free asset. Now we have it in Unity, so import. And click import. And so now what we want to do is add our asset to the camera, is my understanding. And then click main camera or window. Rendering.
Skybox material, you're gonna click this little circle.
Hey, look at that. And there we go. There we go. We got a new background now for our game. So that's how you do the skybox. All right, so great, we got our skybox. We have our prefab platforms. And what we're gonna do today is, let's manage this in Git. And so it's always a good idea if you're using Git, before you do any major work, to go into Git in your project and get the status and get any new changes if we need it. So I right click inside of the folder, I choose git bash here, and now I'm going to type git status. I should see some changes because I changed the Unity with the skybox and some of that information here. So I'm going to need to add that. I'm going to do a git add dot, which adds everything that I have changed, and then I'm going to do a git commit, and it's adding skybox because that's what I did, and now I have it committed. Then I'm going to do a git status, and it should say on branch development. That's the branch I'm on. Nothing to commit, working tree clean. So now I'm going to see if there's anything online on my online repo. So I'm going to do a git pull. I always think in terms of pulling in to see if there's any new changes. Git pull origin. That's the online repo, and development. That's the branch I want to pull from. And then it should ask me for my password. And then hopefully there isn't anything to pull in. Yeah, already up to date. I'm good. I'm ready to continue working, and I made my first commit already. All right, so let's go into Unity, and what we're going to do is we are going to add a player object. So the first thing I want to do is I click on the scene and I'm going to click on Game Object and I'm going to choose 3D Object Sphere. So we're just going to create a sphere and we'll just kind of roll it around. And on our sphere, we're going to change the word sphere to player. That's what it is. And we're going to change the tag from untagged to player. By giving it a tag of player, it's going to allow us to identify that object from other game objects. It's going to help us when we write our code, which is what we're going to do in just a moment. Once we have our sphere, we should always reset. So I'm going to click under transform, and the little gear by transform, I'm going to tell it to reset. It's always a good practice every time you add an object to begin by resetting it. And then we're going to change its position. We're going to change the y to a -1, or let's give it a +1, and that moves it up. I'm going to give it a +1.5. And by the way, you can just click and drag it around, so you can just move it wherever, and that's okay. All right, so just get it so that it's above the platform. And now if I were to click play, you see the sphere there, and you see nothing happens, right? So part of the thing is we don't have any lights. So one other thing I want to do before I do any work on the sphere is bring in a light. So that's also a game object. And we're going to go game object down to light. And we're going to do the directional light. And the moment I do that, now I can see the sphere. But I'm still not seeing the light box. So I'm going to have to figure out what we do there. I'm going to click on main camera. Oh, that's it. I need to change it to Skybox. Perfect. All right. I got my lighting, I got my skybox, I got my sphere, which is now my player object. Oops, when I changed the name sphere, I must not have hit enter or something. So hit player, tab, click. Okay, so now it's player. I renamed it. And at this point, it just floats there, right? It's because it has no mass. So we're going to give it mass. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to add a component. I'm going to click on add component. And this is going to be a physics item. So I click on physics, and then I want to go to rigid body. Rigid body is basically a component that we add to an object that gives it some mass and some physics. Okay, a mass of 1, we leave it there, and we're going to set the angular drag, keep it at default. And then there's one other change we want to do. Where it says constraints, we're going to click that little drop down thing, if my click will work. And where it says position, freeze position, we're going to click on the Z. By clicking the Z, it won't be able to roll forward or backward. So just as a reminder, we created our player, we named it, we tagged it as player, we reset it, then we changed its position, we added the rigid body, we left the default values, but we changed constraints to freeze the Z along the Z axis. Okay? Now let's go ahead and test it out and see what happens now that we have a rigid body. When I click on play, it should just drop. Now it drops, but as soon as it hits the platform, it stops. The reason why it stops on the platform, and we'll take a look at that platform, is the fact that the platform has what's called a box collider. So when a physics object hits a box collider, it stops. Because now it just hit it. And I'm going to unplay that. Okay, so at this point, now I've added my player object and I gave it some physics. So I'm going to go back to get, and I'm going to commit that. Because I did a little test, everything seemed to work. So I'm going to do a get add dot. I'm going to do a get status because I want to see what I changed. And it was basically the scene is what I changed. And I had the player, so I think all I need to do is do a get commit message of adding physics. Adding physics rigid body to player object. There we go. Okay. All right, so now we have our player. It has a rigid body. Now we're ready to do some programming. And we're going to basically talk about the anatomy of a Unity script as we do it. So we still have the player selected. And what I'm going to do is, before I do that, I'm going to actually create a folder to store my sprites. Okay, so at this point, you might have noticed I changed my skybox. I wanted to try a different one, so I wanted that kind of weird, cool background in the evening. All right, so what we're gonna do now is we've got our player. What we're gonna do is we're gonna program our player using a script. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a component, which is gonna be a script. Now, the easiest way, I think, is to click Game Object and, click Assets, Create C# Script. This is how I normally do it. And then I'm gonna call it Player Controller. Now you'll notice, for whatever strange reason, I had the Ultra Skybox folder open and it wanted to put it in there. So I'm gonna call this Player Controller, capital P, capital C, no spaces. But then I'm gonna move it out directly into the Assets folder. And then now when I click on Assets, you'll see Player Controllers there. And now I'm going to add a new folder to Assets. And click Create, Folder. I'm going to call it Scripts. Oops. Scripts. Okay. So now I have a new folder in Assets by right-clicking and choosing New Folder. And then I title it, and now I'm going to drag the player controller into that folder, let go, double click on scripts, and now I have player controller in there. Now, the only reason why I'm spending all this time working on folders and things is there's a lot of objects that go into a Unity game, and we're going to want to order those in a way that helps us out. I'm going to capitalize the S in scripts because I just realized pretty much all the other ones are capitalized other than the... So I got player controller. I got my script in there. So if you look to the right, you can see a little bit about the script. You can see some general things that's already been pre-done for you, kind of like a template. What we want to do is we want to drop the player controller script onto the player itself. So this script is going to, you'll never guess what it's going to do. Do you notice what it's called? Player controller. It's going to control the player. Yeah. Yeah, who knew? All right, notice. I dragged the script, I dropped it onto the player, and now it's a new component. Okay, so I'm going to just hide the rigid body, and I just want to focus on this player controller script. And you'll notice it says script right there, player controller. I'm going to double click on that, and now it's going to open up Visual Studio. Okay, so it's finally opened up. I'm going to zoom in. I use the dark mode, and I'm going to zoom in on this. Hold on a second while I get that set up. Okay, so I zoomed in a little bit. Okay, so, all right, a couple things just want to point out. The name of this script is called Player Controller because it controls the player. We're going to do multiple scripts. Each script will perform some operation. Now, we're going to control the player, so we write a script for it. A lot of times I will mention things like place something in the class. The class is really just a blueprint for how this thing behaves and operates. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to declare any variables we need. And we're going to create a private rigid body. We call it m_rb. That declares the variable we are going to use. And then we're going to initialize this variable by doing m_, hey, look at that. It already hints that you have this variable that starts with m_, it's RB, it's highlighted. I hit enter, bam, we get it there. mRB equals, let's get component, hold on. I'm gonna go look at my, in just a second while I double check. Okay, it's get component, they do angle brackets, rigid body, like so. That should work. I don't know why it doesn't like it. Hold on a second. It is case sensitive, so rigid body would have a little b. So this would have, yeah, it's a lowercase b. Rigid body. And it likes it now. Okay, so in update, we're going to create a new variable, and we're going to call it movement. And movement is going to be a floating point number. So it's going to be a precise number, like anywhere from like 0.00001 to, whatever. We're going to call it movement, and then what we're going to do is we're going to use input. Input dot get axis. Why does it not like that? Hold on, let me double. Well, I was hoping it would already recognize that, but for axis, we're going to get the horizontal axis. And what it's saying basically is that will basically grab the input device, and which would be could be the keyboard with the arrows, it could be a joystick, possibly even the mouse. And it's looking for left to right movement. And then it's going to capture it at every update. So like 60 times a second, it's going to be capturing whatever is being pressed. And it's going to store it in a variable called movement. Then we're going to take the rigid body, which by the way, the rigid body is the sphere because it has that rigid body on it. And then from that, what we're going to do is we're going to add force. So we put a dot, add force. Notice add as a capital A, force as a capital F, but there's no space in between. And then in here, we're going to create new, and it's going to be a vector 3. I'm going to put a little semicolon there. And a vector 3, we're going to give it movement. Okay, in a vector 3, we're taking 3 values, and we're going to add force. Basically, the first value is x. If we are pressing the right arrow, we're going to get a positive number. And so we're going to take the x and we're going to add to it with the variable called movement. We're not going to go up or down, so we're going to put 0.0f like that. And then we're going to put 0.0f, capital F, for z. And that should be all we need. And let's go ahead and we're going to click test on here to attach. Well, skip that for now. We're just going to save changes. And then we're going to go back to our game. And you should see on the right player controller should have that code I just was showing you. We click on player. And then we're going to press play. And we're going to watch the sphere drop. And I'm going to hold down the right arrow. Do you see how it's rolling? It added a horizontal force because I pressed the right arrow. And at this point, it's going to go off the stage and just disappear. I'm going to stop that. Let's play it again. This time I'm going to hold down the left arrow. And you see, and now I'm going to hold on the right arrow and see if I can stop it and send it back in the other direction. Okay, so our script is working. We're going to end the video at this point, but I'm going to leave you with the code I just wrote. And remember, this code called playercontroller.cs needs to be attached to your sphere. It has to also have a rigid body. If it doesn't have a rigid body, it can't do the job it's supposed to do. So on the next tutorial, we're going to make some updates. We're going to allow it to jump, and then eventually we're going to do some other cool little features, which we'll talk about in the future. And guess what? I forgot to add this to Git. Okay, we tested it. I saw that it worked. So what I want to do now is save my changes. File, save, scene. Okay, Control S will do that. Then we want to go into Git. I'm going to type Git status. We can see everything that's been changed. Okay, we changed the scene. We added to the scripts. We even added the Skybox. Okay, so I'm going to do a Git add dot, adds everything. Oops, just wait for it. Then I'm going to type Git commit -m. Adding player controller script for simple movement. All right. So, by the way, if you can fit your git commit message as well as the command on one line and it doesn't spill over and it doesn't wrap, it's short enough. So you want to keep it pretty short, concise, but try to get to the point and say what you did. So that commits it, and now I'm going to do a git push origin development. That way, my online repository will get the changes as well. Oh, I just did the password wrong. That's what I get for having a long password. All right, when you see that, you know everything is working, and then you are basically good to go. So stay tuned for the next video. See you then.